Hey Wargamers, it's Saturday, March 5th. It's been a little while, but this is what's on the table. So unfortunately, the last 2 weeks, I spent a lot of time at my day job. We were pushing out a brand new feature at work. If you don't know, I'm a software developer, and I was the lead on that project, and required a lot of extra time on my part, which meant working evenings and even last weekend a fair bit. And so it means I basically haven't picked up a brush in about 2 weeks, which is why there also wasn't an episode last week, because there was literally basically nothing to show. What I did get done is basically everything on this White Scars model, except the base. The black you can see went on very, very glossy. So I've still got to touch that up, just hit that with some matte finish. And I probably want to add just a little bit of pigment to his boots to look like they're actually dirty, because they're quite clean compared to the terrain he's on. A little cool fact, he's actually standing on the faceplate for an Imperial Knight. And that's a spare bit I had from a commission from the same person who commissioned this White Scar model from a couple years ago. So it's kind of neat that I still had that lying around and was able to incorporate it into his next piece. But you'll see more detail on that next week when I've just done the full Revolve video and everything. I've also done a little bit more work on Archangel Michael. Basically all of the non-metallic metal is done now. But I'm not really happy with how the gold non-metallic came out. I don't think I drove it to a dark enough color in the shadowy areas. So I've kind of been letting it sit on the desk because I'm not perfectly happy with it, so I don't want to send it to the customer yet. And I'm not sure if that's what's bothering me about it, or if it's just because I haven't finished the base. I'm going to finish the base this week now that things have settled down a little bit. And if that doesn't make me happy with it, then I'm probably going to look at adding some more contrast to the gold areas. The gray metallic has a lot of contrast. It's going straight from pretty much all the way from black to white. But there's not the same contrast on the gold, and it does make the gold look brighter, which is a good thing, but I feel like maybe the shadows need to be darker. I also managed to finish 2 more models for my Guild Ball Fisherman. You can see rotations of them right here. So that's Angel and Shark. And Angel, honestly, I think is the best female figure I've ever painted to date. The face you're seeing now is actually my 3rd attempt at painting the face on this model. So the first time I painted it, I wasn't really happy with the eyes. But the paint was still quite thin at that point. I'd only painted it once. And so I painted over the mistakes or the parts I didn't like. But at that point, especially around the eyes, I was starting to get 6 or 7 layers of paint built up, and it was actually starting to lose detail and look a bit chalky, and the way it would if you were to use thick paints and so on. And so at that point, I made the decision that I didn't like how her face was going, but the rest of the model was actually looking pretty good at that point. And so I grabbed an old dry brush and I actually scraped away all the paint on her face. It actually ruined the brush, but the brush was on its way out anyway, the handle was snapped and so on, so I'm not too worried about that. But I actually just, with friction, rubbed all the paint off her face, basically back to her hairline. And there were still some little bits of paint left in her eyes and so on, and so I grabbed an X-Acto knife and I actually really delicately scraped the paint away from those details. And I feel it was a better choice than chemically stripping the paint, because I didn't have to start everything all over again. But picking all that little paint out of a model that, I mean, I wanted to do a really high detail job on this. I didn't want to ruin her face, and there was the worry that I was going to like scar her cheek or like gouge out an eye or something with the edge of the X-Acto blade. So I was actually using the X-Acto blade upside down, so the sharp edge was facing away, and I was just using the tip. And it took probably 5 or 10 minutes to finish scraping all the detail, like all the paint off the details. But as soon as I started repainting that face, it was just a completely different experience. I don't know what changed for me mentally, but everything just worked. I mean, I don't know if you can see it in the pictures here, but there's actually 4 colors to her eyes, and this was what I picked up from Elizabeth Beckley's masterclass that I took back in Quebec in January. If you have a chance to take one of her painting classes at LVO, or she's going to be at Adepticon, I believe, as well, take her class. It's fantastic. She's a really good instructor. But what I did is I painted the whole eye with an off-white. Then I painted the pupil, which was just straight black. And I painted a small colored line beside the pupil to give the iris shade. And beside that, I painted a little line of pure white, so it just gives the eye a bit of like a sparkly bright area. And then I brought in the darkest skin tone around her eye to define that sort of almond eye shape, and worked from there. And then I started getting a little more creative and brought in the eyeshadow and some of the makeup-y kind of colors. That I wasn't actually originally intending on doing those, but I felt so confident at that point with what I was doing that I went ahead and did it. And I'm glad I did, because this is honestly, I don't feel like I'm bragging when I say this is the best female face I've ever painted. The work in progress photo for this miniature, so the miniature wasn't even done yet, just her face was done really, and just base coats and some other areas, is currently my most shared picture on Twitter ever. I think I had like 135 likes and 35 retweets. I'll check those numbers later, it doesn't really matter. The point is, I think it doubled my next closest, like, really well shared image. And that was the work in progress, but it wasn't even the finished model, which I posted the next day and didn't get nearly the same result. For 3 or 4 days, people were still sharing that, and I was just kind of really blown away by the support from the community for what I I mean, I was honestly very proud of it because I did a good job. I know I did a good job, but seeing that outpouring of support was really, really awesome. Anyway, that's what I got done last week. Basically nothing. It kind of sucks. What's on the table right now, so this is actually, I guess it's sort of what I did last week, because I did a lot of it last night. So I've had a small collection of unpainted Infinity Minis growing. And because the Tabletop Media Co-op actually has a good relationship with Corvus Belli, they send us some releases for review, or just because they really like us. And because of that, I've got more than I bargained for. I ended up getting a Mobile Brigada box and a couple other blisters. And I already owned about 8 unpainted models myself. So I think that this week I hit the point where my unpainted Infinity miniatures outnumbered my painted Infinity miniatures. And they're all for one faction with the exception of 2 mercenaries. Everything else is nomads. The ones I already have done, I basically painted to a tabletop standard. I didn't put a lot of time and effort into them. And so I had to do the same thing with these ones. I didn't want to go really all out. Maybe with a couple characters, but not with the line troops. So earlier this week, when I had a little bit of free time, I assembled everything I had on hand. So Sin Eater Observant, the Alois Seals box, Reverend Moira, Doctari, Zonbot, the Authorized Bounty Hunter with boarding shotgun and her bike, Branda Castro, 4 Mobile Brigadas, which is the Mobile Brigada box, Intruder with HMG, and Avicenna. I mean, and that's all, as of yesterday, was just bare metal. So I primed all that yesterday. I did a 3-color primer. All right, so this is Branda Castro, and I just want to sort of show my priming technique here. So I started by priming the entire model with Vallejo Surface Primer Black through the airbrush. And you can see it's quite dark from the bottom. Then what I did is I grabbed Vallejo Surface Primer Gray and hit it from about this angle. So spin the model all the way around and just airbrush the whole thing from that angle. And then I grabbed Vallejo Surface Primer White and did it almost straight down. And that gives you a nice zenithal base coat. And that's not absolutely necessary for priming because I'm going to paint over every surface anyway. But what it lets you do is see every small detail on the miniature. I mean, you can see his face very, very well defined right now. And if I had primed the whole thing black, I may have trouble seeing the details. It's very painter friendly to prime this way because it lets you see the things you might actually end up missing. The problem is it also makes it really easy to see mold lines or little bits of, you know, sprue clip and stuff like that you left behind. But I primed all of them this way, so I mean for half an hour I was just running black primer through my airbrush, and then a couple minutes of gray primer, and the white primer goes on very quickly. And for most of the Nomad models, what I then did was spray them again from the bottom with UK Azure, which is sort of a bluish gray. The white armor on my completed Nomads has always had a little bit of a blue tint to it because I've always done a blue oil wash to finish it off, and I am going to do that, but I just wanted to accentuate it a little bit, so I sprayed them with UK Azure just from the bottom up very, very lightly, just to give the shadows a little bit of a blue tint. And you can see it's definitely, like from this angle, it's quite noticeable. She becomes blue and goes straight to almost white there. And then everything else I've just been brushing in by hand. So I've only got 2 colors laid down on about half the models right now. I'm intentionally leaving a few unpainted. I want to paint 1 Mobile Brigada and 1 Alois Seal on video in my Nomads colors. The Authorized Bounty Hunter and Avicenna, I'm going to paint in different colors because they are mercenaries, and so I'm going to capture that on video as well, I believe. There's also the Intruder with HMG here. And I kind of want to go with just a completely different color scheme with him. If you've seen my Spectre in the past, he's a little bit darker. He's actually more black with just white accents. He's kind of the reverse of my Mobile Brigadas. And so I'm kind of thinking I might want to do something similar with the Intruder where I focus more on the black aspects and white is just going to be sort of a highlight color in a few areas. And so I just left him aside because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with him. And finally, the last one is Branda Castro. I want to treat him as if he's a character, so I'm going to give him just a more detail-oriented paint job. I'm not sure if I'll do that on camera or not, but I do want to spend more time on the small details, and so I'm just not batch painting him with the rest. But that said, the batch painting's going to get 9 of these done, 10 if I get the Zonbot in there as well. And that's a huge leap forward on my Infinity Army, so I'm pretty happy I'm finally working on this. Unfortunately, I've had no time to edit videos in the last 2 weeks. There's been no new videos go up. I have recorded a little bit, and I'm hoping to get that up later this weekend, but it's probably more likely going to be later next week before I actually get a video up again. The reason for that is actually pretty positive, though. The rest of this weekend, I'm going to be working on building my new studio in my basement. So I've got most of the walls framed, and this weekend we're going to start putting up insulation and drywall and going from there. So I'm pretty happy with that because it's going to give me a much more permanent space and a better camera setup. And so basically, I hope every aspect of my videos gets better because of the new studio I'll be filming in. So I mean, I'm still a little ways off from it being ready to be used, but the fact that I'm going to be able to work on it again this weekend is pretty exciting, and I'm looking forward to it. So this coming week, my goal is really just to finish what you're seeing right now. So I want to finish up the base on these 2 miniatures, just call it a day, get those shipped out to their client, and then just hammer through as much of my Infinity stuff as possible. I also have some more Dark Age miniatures to pick up, and the rest of my Fisherman team, and so they've got to get into the schedule here somewhere as well, but I don't think I'm going to hit them this week, because there's only so many hours in a week, and I do want to get some videos edited. Anyway, that's what's on my table. Let me know in the comments below what's on yours, if you have any questions, or if there's a tutorial you're just dying to see. Hope you'll tune in again next week, and until then, don't forget to do something epic. Hey, thanks for watching my video. If you liked that one, why don't you check out some battle reports right over here, or check out more epic hobby content right over here. If you really like what I'm doing and want to support my creative efforts, I really urge you to become one of my supporters on Patreon. You can find out more about that right here. Thanks for watching.